You have 24 hours to vacate this property. The woman's voice, sharp and entitled, cut through the quiet mountain air like a rusty saw. And there I was, standing in the doorway of a house I'd legally owned for 9 days, hammer still in my hand, staring at 3 strangers in matching, crisp homeowner association polo shirts. The woman in charge, she was wearing a navy blazer and wielding a clipboard like a royal scepter, looking at me like I was a piece of debris she needed to scrape off her perfectly manicured community. 9 days. I bought this place for $5 at a county tax auction. $5. And the deed paperwork, officially stamped and recorded, was still sitting right there in my glove box. But apparently, none of that mattered to Queen Veronica Sterling of the Blackwood Peaks HOA. To understand how this ended with federal agents in handcuffs, I have to take you back, way back, to the reason I ended up on this forgotten mountain in the first place, standing in a house that smelled like 150 years of silence and pine resin. 7 months before Veronica walked through my broken door, I was sitting in a hospital room, watching my wife, Nora, fade away. Nora was an architectural editor, the kind of person who could spend an entire evening passionately debating the merits of Queen Anne versus Victorian gingerbread trim. She loved old buildings, not because they were beautiful, but because they had stories, because they were built to survive time. In her last weeks, when the morphine made her words slow and precious, she'd grip my hand and talk about a dream she had, a house on a remote mountain. Somewhere, the morning light filtered through old-growth Douglas fir beams and made the whole structure glow like amber, and she wanted to see something like that restored, saved from the edge of collapse. I promised her. I swore I would find it. 3 weeks later, she was gone. I'm an architectural historian, mostly freelance detective work with blueprints and old deed records. But after Nora passed, every project felt hollow. Every building I documented just reminded me that time always wins. I was just filling the void, scrolling through county auction listings one late spring afternoon, when I saw it. 150-year-old mountain homestead, tax foreclosure, minimum bid $5. The photos were terrible. The roof was half gone. Windows were empty black eye sockets. It looked more like a skeletal ruin than a building. But I recognized the framing in one shot. Douglas fir, old growth, the kind of heavy timber they literally don't cut anymore. I clicked through to the property records. 1875, built by a forgotten prospector named Elias Vance. 3.2 acres of untouched wilderness. Something shifted in my chest. Purpose. I put in my bid that night. $5. No one else bid against me. 2 weeks later, I was driving up a narrow access road. The deed in my glove box. The GPS long dead. I navigated by an old printed survey map. When I finally pulled into the clearing, the sun was just beginning to hit the highest peaks. The house was tilted, moss-covered, but in that morning light, the broken beams caught the sun and the old frame glowed with gold and shadow. For the first time in 7 months, I didn't feel the crushing weight of loss. I felt the sharp, intoxicating focus of a mission. I moved slowly, testing the sagging porch steps, then through the front door that hung open on one hinge. The floorboards protested, but the bones of the place were solid. The center support beams were massive, intact. The granite fireplace stood firm, blocks fitted so tight you couldn't slide a razor blade between them. I was documenting everything, and following instinct, I checked the foundation first, pulling open the trap door to the root cellar. That's where you find a building's truth, you know? Down in the cool, earthy darkness, shoved into a gap between 2 foundation stones, I found it. A small, rusted tin box, wrapped in rotten oilcloth. Inside were papers. The original land patent, 1875, signed by the Commissioner of the General Land Office. A hand-drawn survey map showing the exact boundaries, 3.2 acres, and the federal deed, stamped with the eagle seal of the United States government. I knew immediately what I was holding. This wasn't just a deed you get from a county recorder. This was a federal land patent, a paramount title, a grant from the government itself, the kind of legal document that supersedes virtually everything that came after it. I photographed every page and stored the originals in a waterproof document case in my truck, knowing I had struck legal gold. For the next 9 days, I worked nonstop, shoring up floors, replacing broken glass with salvaged panes. It was the first time since Nora died that I felt like I was building something, not just documenting decay. I was restoring a piece of history because someone 150 years ago built it with their hands, and because Nora would have absolutely loved it. Then, on day 9, I heard the vehicles pull up. I walked out, tape measure still in hand, expecting a curious neighbor. Instead, I saw Veronica Sterling, navy blazer, clipboard, and a pair of matching HOA minions. She looked me up and down, pure contempt, and then delivered the opening line of this whole mess. This land belongs to the homeowners association. I was covered in sawdust, genuinely baffled. She rattled off 14 covenant violations, told me the house had to be removed, and that I was trespassing. She introduced herself, Veronica Sterling, president of the Blackwood Peaks Homeowners Association. 12 years running. She said it like it was a title I should bow to. I showed her the county auction paperwork, but she barely glanced at it. Tax auction sales don't override HOA jurisdiction, she said, her smile cold. This land has been under our management since 2001. I looked at the deed in my back pocket. 1875. I looked back at her. I think there's been a mistake, I said. The only mistake here is yours, she countered. You have 24 hours to clear out. After that, we're calling the sheriff and having you removed for criminal trespassing. She then turned and drove away, kicking up a cloud of dust. That night, my pulse hammering, I sat in the dark house trying to make sense of her certainty. I knew the county deed was clear, but her authority felt absolute. I searched for Blackwood Peaks HOA, and my stomach dropped. Pages of one-star reviews, horror stories of arbitrary fines, legal threats over paint colors. The recurring name, Veronica Sterling, 12 years, no elections, just a tightening grip. I thought about Nora, about the promise. I wasn't going to let some HOA tyrant take this away. But I wasn't stupid, either. I needed a lawyer, and I needed to understand the law. The next morning, I drove straight to the county law library. 3 hours later, buried in case law and statutory references about property rights, and something called paramount title, I had my defense. Then I called the person I should have called months ago, Eleanor Vance, Nora's lifelong friend, a sharp, semi-retired real estate attorney specializing in historical property disputes. Owen, she said after I explained, that's not just a deed. That's a federal land patent. That means the HOA has zero jurisdiction. None. Come to my office. Bring every document. The very next morning, exactly 24 hours after Veronica's ultimatum, I heard multiple engines outside. I looked out and saw a sheriff's cruiser, Veronica's black SUV, and 2 pickup trucks filled with her polo shirt minions carrying clipboards and cameras. Sheriff Dale Mason, a weathered, 50-something officer, got out first. Mr. Fairchild, I got a call about a trespassing situation. I walked toward them, holding the county papers. Sheriff, I own this land. Legally purchased at a county auction. Veronica stepped forward, that same cold smile fixed on her face. That auction was invalid, Sheriff. This property falls under HOA jurisdiction. Then I pulled out the trump card, the land patent, the original 1875 document, now in a clear archival sleeve. This, Sheriff, is a federal land grant from 1875, signed by the Commissioner of the General Land Office. Federal law says this supersedes any local covenants. Veronica's smile finally faltered. That's just an old piece of paper. It has no legal standing. Sheriff Mason looked from my papers to hers, then back to Veronica. Ma'am, these look legitimate. Mr. Fairchild has proof of ownership through the county. If you have a dispute about jurisdiction, that's a civil matter. Take it up in court. He handed my documents back. Mr. Fairchild, you're free to continue your work. Just follow county building codes. He got back in his cruiser and drove off, leaving Veronica standing there looking at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. Her ultimatum had been called, and she had lost. This isn't over, she hissed. You're going to regret this. I drove straight to Eleanor's office. She confirmed everything. The land patent was constitutional-level property protection. But she warned me, this woman is not going to stop. She's going to escalate. Her instructions were simple. Document everything. Get security cameras. When this goes to court, we'll need proof they've been harassing you. That afternoon, I bought 4 high-definition wireless security cameras. 3 nights later, around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion alert. I opened the app and froze. 2 figures, Veronica and a man in an expensive jacket, were moving across my property, scanning the foundation with a laser. I switched on the audio feed. The survey confirms it, the man said. Gemstone deposit runs right under this section. 3 million, maybe more. And he doesn't know? Veronica asked, her voice chillingly calm. He bought it for $5. He thinks it's just an old house. So, we just need to get him out, Veronica concluded. Can your company move in once the title's clear? Every word, every frame, was caught on infrared. This was never about covenants or paint colors. It was about greed, pure and simple. I sent the file to Eleanor. We need to talk. Now, Eleanor and I sat in her office, watching the footage loop. When the talk of the $3 million deposit came through the speakers, Eleanor's jaw tightened. This changes everything, Owen. This is no longer a property dispute. This is a conspiracy to commit fraud, possibly theft, and we have it all on tape. Within days, Eleanor had tracked down the man, Russell Thorne, owner of Thorne Development Corporation. She found a paper trail. Over the last 5 years, Veronica had systematically targeted 7 properties through manufactured HOA violations, forcing owners to sell cheap, only for Thorne Development to buy them months later at a markup. It was a well-oiled, profitable criminal enterprise, and my $5 shack was the latest target because of the riches hidden beneath it. But Veronica wasn't done. She hit back with a legal cease and desist letter demanding $45,000 in fines for 18 violations, threatening property seizure. Eleanor told me to ignore it. We're not playing their game, Owen. We're building our own case, and when it's ready, we're going to hit them so hard they won't know what happened. Next, Veronica launched a brutal social media campaign. Someone created a group called Save Our Blackwood Community, using terrible photos of my house to paint me as an evil, rich outsider planning to demolish local heritage. Neighbors who used to wave now crossed the street. I became the villain in a story I didn't recognize. Veronica then called an emergency HOA meeting. Eleanor told me to go and record everything. I arrived early. The room was packed. Veronica stood at the front, projecting an unflattering photo of my house and proposing to reclaim the property for community use, offering me a paltry $10,000 compensation. Applause broke out. But then, a voice cut through the noise. Mrs. Charlotte Davies, an older woman with a folder in her hand, stood up. How can the HOA claim eminent domain over land that was never part of the association? She challenged. I was on the founding board in '01. That property was never included in our charter. Veronica froze, sputtering about amendments. But Mrs. Davies pressed her. Show us the documentation. If the boundaries were changed, there should be meeting minutes, board votes, legal filings. Show us. The room buzzed with doubt. That was my cue. I stood up. I don't think we should table anything, I said, and every head swiveled. My name is Owen Fairchild, and I'd like to clear up a few things. I walked down the aisle, pulling up the land patent photo on my phone. First, I didn't buy this property to develop it. I bought it to restore it. It's a 150-year-old historical structure. Second, I'm not violating any HOA covenants because this property has never been part of the HOA. This federal land patent from 1875 supersedes any local jurisdiction. The HOA has no authority over my land. I held the room with my gaze, and then I delivered the knockout punch. Third, before you vote to seize my land, maybe you should ask your president why she's so desperate to get me off it, and why a real estate developer named Russell Thorne keeps showing up at 2 in the morning to talk about $3 million in gemstone deposits. The room exploded. Veronica was on her feet, shouting slander, but the crowd was shouting louder, demanding answers. The truth, finally, had been spoken in public. I found Mrs. Davies afterwards. She handed me her folder, the original HOA documents, boundary maps, everything that proved Veronica was lying. She did the same thing to me 3 years ago, she said sadly. I sold 2 acres of family land just to make her stop. I've been waiting for someone to fight back. Give her hell. Sound of a determined, sweeping orchestral flourish. Armed with Mrs. Davies's original charter and my security footage, Eleanor and I drove 3 hours to the Bureau of Land Management office. We met with a land records specialist who confirmed that my 1875 land patent was a perfected patent, the highest form of title, impossible to override. He printed us a certified true copy with the federal seal, legal evidence that would hold up in any court in the country. Eleanor turned to me in the parking lot. her eyes alight with purpose. This isn't just a property defense, Owen. This is constitutional protection. What Veronica did, harassing you, threatening to seize your land without legal authority, that's a federal civil rights violation. We filed immediately in federal district court, naming Veronica Sterling, the HOA, and Russell Thorne for conspiracy to deprive civil rights, fraud, and harassment. The lawsuit was 40 pages of undeniable truth. 2 weeks later, the FBI showed up at Veronica's house. Federal agents had gotten involved because the case crossed state lines and involved potential wire fraud. The security footage showing the conspiracy triggered a full-scale investigation. What they found was worse than we thought. Veronica had meticulously tracked 47 properties over 7 years, an $8.3 million fraud scheme built on terrorizing families off their land. The local news ran the headline, HOA president arrested in multi-million-dollar land fraud scheme. Veronica and Russell Thorne were both arrested that same day. 6 weeks later, the federal trial began. I sat in the courtroom with Eleanor and Mrs. Davies. The prosecution was relentless. They presented the land patent, the certified BLM document, the security footage of the gemstone plot, the financial records proving the $1.24 million payout to Veronica, and the devastating testimony of 4 previous victims. The defense's argument, that Veronica genuinely believed the properties were under HOA jurisdiction, was destroyed when the prosecution presented an email from Veronica to Russell Thorne. The Harrison property isn't technically in our jurisdiction, but if we push hard enough, they won't know the difference. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They returned a verdict of guilty on all counts: fraud, conspiracy to deprive civil rights, trespass, witness intimidation. 6 weeks later, the judge sentenced Veronica to 5 years in federal prison on the fraud charges, plus concurrent time for the civil rights violations. She was also ordered to pay $2.7 million in restitution to her victims, including $350,000 to me. Russell Thorne got 7 years. The HOA held elections immediately. Mrs. Davies was voted in as the new president, and her first act was a formal apology to me and the other victims. Neighbors started showing up at the house, toolboxes in hand, offering to help with the restoration. 8 months after the trial, I stood on the newly rebuilt porch. The restoration was complete. The cedar roof was solid, the windows sparkled, and inside, the Douglas fir beams glowed with the amber light Nora had dreamed about. I'd added a small plaque near the door, Vance Fairchild House, listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It was protected forever, a monument to a promise kept. I looked at the check Eleanor had handed me, $350,000 in restitution. I decided immediately what to do with it. I told Eleanor, I'm going to set up a legal defense fund for people dealing with HOA overreach and property fraud. Free consultations, expert witnesses, whatever they need to fight back. Nobody should have to face what I faced alone. She smiled. I'll help you set it up pro bono. Later that evening, standing by the original granite fireplace, I pulled out Elias Vance's journal. I read his last entry from 1891. A home is not just wood and stone. It is a promise to the future that something good can last. I took out my pen and added my own entry below his, dated today. This house has stood for 150 years. It has survived time, weather, and those who wanted to tear it down for profit. Today, it stands as proof that truth is stronger than power, that the law protects those who stand up for it, and that some promises are worth keeping no matter the cost. I stepped onto the porch, the sun setting, painting the mountains in amber and gold. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The house was alive again, and so was I. Now, I want to hear from you. Was my decision to use the $350,000 to start a legal defense fund the right move? Or should I have used it all to finish the house? Have you ever had to fight a Veronica Sterling to protect your home? Drop a comment below, tell me your story, and let's keep the conversation going about where the line should be drawn on HOA power. Hit the like button if you think the land patent is the ultimate legal loophole, and subscribe for more unbelievable stories.